So our current target market is predominantly industrial use. And over time in India, when the DPR norm starts, which is direct portable reuse norm starts in 2024, people will start adopting. So in Singapore, if you go, we start drinking recycled water. There is a statistics which says if we stay in Singapore for 3 days, you invariably have drank the recycled water.
That was right from the middle of this episode. I'm sure you would like to know more about it. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to yet another episode on the Mission Shunya podcast. If this is your first episode, a special and a warm welcome to you. I am sure you'll enjoy this podcast episode and subscribe to it like just how thousands of others have done so far. Well, I know 1000 looks to be a small number in comparison to the challenges around the global zero carbon transition. But do you know you can help in amplifying the message? All you have to do is give a rating or write a review on Apple Podcast or any platform that you listen to this show on. Trust me, it goes a long way in the show's global discoverability. Now let's get to this week's feature segment. Water is a stress asset globally without a shadow of doubt. The only differentiator is a stress level. Some countries can manage by just using regulated piped supply, while some countries have to deplete the groundwater assets to be able to sustain normal lifestyle. But the situation can be improved by a simple change to our lifestyle, which is the topic for today's discussion. So, who's our guest? What is the technology capable of doing? And what is the mission all about?
Hi, I'm Vikas Brahmavar. I run this company called Trans Water System Private Limited. Our equipment is called Boson White Water, which converts any wastewater to technically potable quality water. I have been in the industry for the past 12 years and we want to change the way people use water. And our mission is to make our cities sustainable, and by 2030 we will succeed in making our cities sustainable.
So, Vikas, let's begin with the origins of the Boson White Water. How did you get started with the company? Is your origins from the water industry?
Yeah, Girish. So I'm from a software background. I used to work in the UK on the IT side of an investment bank. And then in 2008, I decided to move back. And during one of the party, I suddenly became patriotic and decided to move back to our country in 2008. So for the past 12 years, we have been working on water.
That's fantastic. How did this transition happen? So, did you upskill yourself? Did you pick up some new skills, or did you align with partners who are experts in this?
Yeah, actually, what used to happen is during my lunch break in the UK in London, I used to walk to the Thames and I sit near the Thames River and keep having my breakfast. And not even one day I had smell coming out of the river. So I thought, why can't our cities have good clean water in the rivers? And I kept on pondering on that for a few years, and then decided I have to do something meaningful, and I decided to move back. I've been passionate on water and water recovery from my younger days. There used to be a bottled water plant next to the place where I used to live. So I think from there I picked up the passion, and I somehow get motivated when we talk or work on water.
It's a good background to have in terms of like growing up, you see a problem and then you want to act on it, or you kind of connect to things around you when you grow up. So that's interesting point of the story. But now looking at the issue that you started addressing, so we all know water is a stressed asset in a country like India, especially in the metropolis. So what are the challenges, or what is the big issue with water that you quantify or you put forward when you speak to people?
Yeah, Girish. So when I moved back, people say, is the water scarcity real, or is it just the media hype where everyone is saying water is not there and things like that? So people ask this question, or is the scarcity real? So I have the real life data where in 2008, when we did the survey of average borewell depth, it was around 400, 350, 400. It was sometimes even 200 feet. So average came up to 200, 250 feet was the average depth. Now people are going up to 700, 800 feet below the ground to get the water. So in terms of groundwater availability, the water scarcity is real. But in terms of surface water, we have enormous amount of water flowing in our streams, either good water or bad water. It keeps flowing, so we have enormous amount of water, but it is mostly wastewater which is not being used.
The problem that you saw was wastewater not being used, and that's something that you felt can be addressed. Is there any comparison between you spoke about being in UK and finding the system better there in terms of water treatment? So can you give us a short comparison between how the systems are, especially the wastewater treatment between, say, developed country like UK and in India?
So, what generally happens in our country is our water management, the government, on all the policy holders, water management is done based on what is coming to the city as rain. Say, we understand what is the volume of water which is available in the dam, and then do all our planning based on what is coming into the city. However, all advanced and developed countries, starting from 1960s, they plan their water management not based on what is coming into the city as rain, but what is going out of the city, because that is more predictable. You know the population of a city, you know what is going to be the wastewater which is going out of the city, and you do your entire water management based on what is going out of the city and not what is coming into the city. That infrastructure model needs to change in our country, and that is a big difference compared to Singapore, compared to Israel, compared to many other places where they depend less on rainfall. Rainfall is a bonus, but rest all the entire management is done based on what is going out of the city and not what is coming into the city. We don't have to keep on depending on rain gods. 2 years of drought will kill our entire water management infrastructure.
That's really scary. So you do mention about advanced countries like Israel and in India. Now, looking at the issue, you did develop some solutions. So, as a company, what are the different kind of solutions that you offer in this space? Especially when we talk about saving water, that is recycling. How do you help customers in this space, especially in recycling part of it?
Yes, Girish. So, what is happening is, just in Bangalore, if you take the treated wastewater, which is partially treated, say every apartment has sewage treatment plant. The partial treated water is currently used for flushing and garden.
Hmm?
Remaining 60 or 80% of that water is actually sent to the drain. So that amounts to close to 200 crore liter of water every day in Bangalore. We give it to the drain. So what we do is, this partially treated water, we take it and put it to our Boson White Water System and convert it to technically drinking quality water. And this water can be used for technically any purpose, and it can be used for industries, cooling towers, drinking, or any purpose. So our solution takes the partially treated STP treated water, converts it to potable quality water, and we use a 11 stage treatment process where each stage addresses a different kind of issue, different kind of contaminant. So that's what we do, Girish. And one more thing which we have done is, we have done IoT, predictive analysis, all these things we have done in our equipment, where we have reduced the operational cost of the equipment. And together with this, we don't ask the customer to invest on this equipment, we do the investment on the equipment and charge the customer for every liter of water they actually reuse for their purpose. We have done it for large malls where they're paying on per liter basis.
You mentioned about the 11 stage process. Hearing 11 in the number itself kind of says it could be an elaborate process. So, what is the type of customers that you're looking at in this space? Is it a big apartment complex with multiple tens or 20 apartments in it? Or how small can it be? Or how big does the system have to be?
Yeah, Girish. So it can be as small as 30,000 liters, which is say 75 units apartment, to any large malls. We have done it for large malls, IT parks, all these places in Bangalore. IT parks and malls buy the water for themselves. Apartment can treat the excess water, and we help them comply the government norms and take the water and supply it to industries. So our target market generally is IT parks, malls, and apartment complexes with more than 75 units. So we'll be able to help them meet the compliance in terms of reuse of water, and also they don't have to suffer the excess water going to their drains or going to nearby lake and contaminating them.
What is the duration of the projects generally from start to finish when you take up a project of this scale?
So imagine if it is a 1 lakh liters of water excess. So it generally takes 8 weeks to have our system installed in their place. It looks like a container, 20 feet container. We place the equipment inside their apartment complex or IT parks, and within a week after the installation, they have clear, crystal clear water going back to them. So technically, they'll have to take 8 weeks after the agreement and commercial process.
Now, we did talk about one part of it, which is recycling. You did mention about the 11 stage process that it involves and the quality of water. Now, coming to the second part is reuse. How confident are customers, general public, in terms of reusing the water? What are the products and solutions that you offer that kind of convinces them, saying that the quality is better and you can use it for other purposes? So, what are the products that you kind of define and provide them?
This treated water is currently being reused for cooling towers, flushes, industrial processing. It will take some time in our country to adapt to the psychology of reusing for drinking purpose. However, even though the water real time says it's better than any of the municipal water or the tanker water they currently use. So the equipment we have given all the remote monitoring parameters. People can see the quality of water coming to their place. So our current target market is predominantly industrial use, and over time in India, when the DPR norm starts, which is direct portable reuse norm starts in 2024, people will start adopting. So in Singapore, if you go, we start drinking recycled water. There is a statistics which says if we stay in Singapore for 3 days, you invariably have drank the recycled water. So there is a yuck factor which is still there. We are trying to address that, but current target market we are supplying to industries where they directly save on reprocessing cost. If they buy a tanker water or any borewell water, they still have to process it. We avoid that entire processing cost and supply this water.
That's wonderful. And are industries also on the same operating cost model, or do they pay for it upfront?
No, industries buy water from us. Basically, instead of tanker, they buy high quality water from us. If the industry themselves have excess wastewater, we set up the equipment on boot model where we bill per liter basis. So otherwise, it is just supply of water. They pay for water which they buy.
How many years does the system last in general? Or are technology advancements at such a pace where do you have to replace some of the components? I assume they would be filters like RO filters. Do you have to replace them often, or how robust is the system generally?
So, if we put a conventional RO membrane, conventional pre-treatment, the replacement is pretty often and the operating cost is very high. So, what we have done is we have validated various types of ores which are used in pre-filtration, like aluminum silicate, manganese dioxide. Generally, the cycle is around 3 years. We have to replace one or the other components. The basic cartridges generally gets replaced even more often. The replacement frequency entirely depends on what input water we get, but however, there is a small number of cartridges which needs to be replaced every month. The membranes which you told RO membranes, we use an advanced low fall RO membranes which doesn't choke very often. So and even that needs to be changed once in 3 or 5 years, depending on the quality of water. We have had cases where people have not replaced the membrane for 7 years. We have had cases where people have replaced the membrane for 3 years. So our equipment, since it is remotely monitored in terms of predictive analysis, we know well in advance on what type of actions to take to prevent the membranes from choking faster.
Talking of predictive analysis, it brings me to my next point around the effect it could have on consumers to kind of reduce their consumption. Because, I mean, using water is one, but optimizing your use and reducing your consumption is also another part of water conservation. What are your efforts or the company's efforts in that direction?
What has been happening is water meters are being widely sold, and the attitude of a water meter needs to be where we don't find culprits who use more water. We use water meters to prevent leakages, to prevent loss of water in different locations. So our view is the data gives people awareness in terms of what they are currently using, whether water is leaking, whether they are using excess water, whether they don't know where the excess water is going. All these can be identified with water meters, and in our system we have these data which is remotely coming, and we help customers to exactly know if a customer is using that water efficiently or not using our equipment. So they clearly know what they're giving to our system and clearly know what they're getting back.
The other reason I'm asking this particular question is because of your business model. They pay per use. Are they really incentivized to kind of use less so that they pay less? Do you see that correlation happening?
Yes, 100%. So, for example, in one of the malls, we put this meter exactly. They did not know how much they were using. Now, since it is billed for every liter of water, they get the data. If the value is exceeding certain value, say 1 lakh liters they are buying, if it is going to 1 lakh 10, 1 lakh 20, there is an alarm going. Where is the water, excess water going? So, people are becoming aware on where this water is actually being used, whether it is wasted. They can alter the process to check whether it is not wasted and things like that. So to address your question, exactly, it is helping because they are paying for every liter. It is helping them save more water and becoming aware as well.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful to know the positive impact. So it clearly covers the entire ambit around recycling, reusing, and reducing. So this is perfect. Now that leads me to my next questions around the impact. So water, quality of water definitely has a impact on quality of life. So have you quantified in terms of what is the impact that it's had on, say, the overall impact of the system? You did mention that the cost savings that large commercial and industrial clients have in terms of malls or other commercial spaces, but what is a quantified number in terms of impact that you would say?
Our current installed capacity is 34 crore liter of water we are saving every year. That is the current installed capacity of our equipment. And we're looking to touch 100 crore in the next 2 years, 100 crore liter per year of installed capacity. And once we install, it is cumulative. Say this year we installed 34 crore liters. Next year it will 34 plus new number of installations. So to quantify the number, current installed capacity is we are saving around 34 crore liter. If we had not put this equipment, the 34 crore liter would have gone to the drain without use to anyone. It would have gone to the normal stormwater drain and get contaminated with the other contaminated water and effectively go to some agricultural land, and there is not proper use, and half of it goes as sludge also. So we have effectively saved 34 crore liter this year.
You did mention about the scale, the targets that you want to achieve. And do you see that happening in specific geographies in India? Are there any other places outside of India? Are you planning to collaborate with any other players and scale this solution outside as well?
Currently our plan is initial apartment segment is going to be just Bangalore, because
Okay.
Bangalore, our vision, everything lies on Bangalore currently. If we are able to succeed here, there is huge scope in all the 13 cities which we are planning: Hyderabad, Chennai, all the 13 cities which we are planning for the next phase. Initial plan is to have a good number of installation in Bangalore and justify the model. And second thing is we are fighting a big all sides, fighting from all sides. We are fighting with tanker mafias, we're fighting with the government policy changes. So there is a lot of chains which are unsolved, so we want to solve that and give it as a prototype throughout the world. No one has done it, where the logistics of distributing treated water to industries which need. So we are trying to solve this problem, which is going to be helpful for the entire country. So our initial target will be our city, and then we'll slowly move on to other 13 cities in India.
The policy angle that you mentioned, or what would you say will be the crucial trigger, the policy trigger that could kind of change the entire landscape of how water recycling is looked up?
So the current policy all is focused on sewage treatment plant. Say you build an apartment with about 20 units, you are supposed to put sewage treatment plant. But what happens is people put sewage treatment plant for the sake of meeting norms and not for the sake of reuse of water. So when government puts a policy saying the reuse has to be more than 55%, you cannot send excess water out, then that is a strict implementation where people make their STPs work. In Bangalore, 70% of all the STPs which are installed do not work. The predominant reason is the policy is not strong enough, saying that you have to use 50 or 75% of the treated water within your complex because you have enough garden, you have flushes, you are supposed to use that. Policy is what we are insisting the government. We have been succeeding for the past 3 years. We have been speaking to the government officials, and currently recent January 2020th, and they have sent notices to few large apartment complexes because of our struggle. They've got notices where people are asked to use this reuse water if they have enough garden space and flushing, and think about actually reusing this water and not just putting the STP for the sake of the norms.
That's interesting. This is the kind of thing that I hear on the podcast from multiple people who are trying to change the system. But for a lot of people in the sustainability space, actions like this are just a tick box exercise. People just want to have that checked off in the list and move on. But it's interesting that companies like yours is kind of making that shift in the mindset and kind of saying like, let's have a real impact and not look up to this as just a checkbox exercise.
Exactly.
Because you did mention about scaling up and working around this. In terms of your company's goals, how are you looking to scale up to deliver on your grand vision? In terms of who are you trying to get on board and what's your plan for the future?
Yeah, Girish, our target is anything in sustainability is long term. So we align ourselves to this 2030 SDG Sustainable Development Goals. So 2030, by 2030, we want to cater to 25% of Bangalore's industrial water requirement in terms of just the city, and we want to target 2% in all other cities, 13 cities which we have planned by 2030. For that, the step one is to have large systems done this year with in Bangalore. We have spoke to Bangalore Apartment Federation and many other places where we have enormous support from people, from pollution control board, from apartment association. So if we are able to succeed that this year, then we are on track for the 2030 goal. So we'll be eventually supplying 25% of Bangalore's industrial water requirement, and not just that, but 2030 we will have a model which will sustain cities of our country. So if this model works, this is the only way the cities can sustain at the rate which we are using water. The government knows spends 50,000 rupees on surface water, putting canals, treating water which are available on rivers, all that. But we don't spend anything to understand what is below the ground. So suddenly, when problem strikes, when there is drought for 2 years, we don't know how much water we have below the ground. That time, this is the only solution which is going to sustain. We believe we are on track. So 2030 is our target to meet the SDG of 25% waters, Bangalore's water requirement.
That's good. But I'm sure with the kind of work that you're doing, I'm sure your message is getting across to a lot of people. So I'm sure you could probably reach that a lot earlier, and probably you could probably scale it up to a few more cities as you go. That was good on to know about the impact on your plans for the future. Because on a final note, generally when I have a conversation with people like you, sustainability champions, I generally want to pick your brains in kind of having an action item, because a lot of people who listen to the podcast want to take up one particular action item and kind of act on it. So what would be the simplest way for an individual to be more aware of water use in general?
For an individual, if he lives in an independent building, then he should be aware of the quantity of water which he is using, whether he is drawing from borewell or whether he is drawing buying tankers. He should be aware of what water is using. Intentionally, no one wants to waste water. Everyone are aware that they should not be wasting water. The issue is they don't know. So becoming aware is the first point for an individual. For a person living in an apartment, the first point to see is where is all the water going. Not all people are environmentalist, like not all people are like me and you who really worried about him. They are managing their own lives, they're not really bothered. For them to understand this, what is the holistic way of looking at an apartment? So what is the entire, where is the entire water going out, are we using it? So that kind of awareness will come if they put meters. For industrial people, the water needs to be a closed loop. Water, nature does not have water once. Nature recycles water. Water is not meant to be used once, it can be used multiple times. That attitude change has to come in industries where the water is a closed loop cycle and go to a zero discharge. So these are the 2 points which I wanted to say for individual and industries.
That's wonderful. You did bring about the point for industries as well, which was going to be my next question, because a lot of industries in recent times, a lot of companies, although it's coming from the big companies, say they want to go water positive. Is that the same narrative with small scale and medium scale industries as well?
Yes, Girish. Small scale and medium scale, before they become big, water is going to be an important parameter for every industry. So if they plan their infrastructure to become water positive, which is very much feasible, and as against people think it is not going to cost them a lot, there are proper ways of doing it. It's going to save them money if they implement and try becoming water positive.
That's wonderful to know, Vikas, that it's really possible for companies to go water positive. So it's been absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast and share a story that inspires a lot more people to act on issues that's close to their heart. So thanks for taking time to join me on the podcast today.
Thank you very much, Girish. It's pleasure to have people like you supporting sustainability people, and people like you help us, encourage us, inspire us. Keep inspiring. Well done with your work. I would like to close with saying recycling is the only way forward for cities in India to sustain. So I think we should keep that in mind. Thank you, Girish. Thank you very much.
And with that, it's a wrap on the feature segment. I hope it was of value. The discussion covered every part of Vikas's work around recycling, reducing, and reuse of water. So, if you want to champion the cause of sustainable water use, you can follow what Vikas mentioned or reach out to Vikas with your ideas. The details are in the show notes section of this podcast as usual. But if you want to champion the cause of all things related to getting to net zero, you can start with just 30 seconds of your time. How do you do that? Just share the podcast episode link to 3 people in your network. It definitely takes 30 seconds or less. Do you have any feedback or general comments that you would like to share with me? Well, at Mission Shunya across the social media channels is where you can find me, or missionshunya@gmail.com is the ID for all your email inquiries. I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts from the conversation. First, be aware of the water you use so that you can be more judicious about it. Finally, anything in sustainability is long term. So let's remember that and get going with one act at a time. See you again in 2 weeks' time. This is Girish Shivakumar signing off, and as always, thank you for listening.